the pandemic and the virus that we're all kind of experiencing at the minute, meaning that a lot of us are facing working from home. We're here to discuss a topic of how to implement a work-life balance into teams. Now, I think personally I have definitely been guilty of overworking, working in the evenings, not really knowing when to switch off, let's say. And I know I've got 4 people here, great panel to kind of discuss this topic in a bit more detail. So what we'll do is just kind of an introduction. What I like to do is kind of everyone give a brief overview of who you are, what you do, and also something that you're passionate about. Now, it can be to do with your role, your job, either outside of work, in work, anything really that you would say is something that's a passion. So I'll go first. I'm Sophie. Like we've all spoke, I'm a technical recruiter here at Evolution. I focus on the freelance needs at companies across the Nordics, and I'd say my passion is definitely kind of connecting with new people, adding value, but also traveling as well, which obviously hasn't gone to plan over the past year. It's not been able to be fulfilled, but I'll definitely make up for it when we can. So if we just go to Matti, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, sure. So my name is Matti Claesson. I'm currently working at the Nordic Entertainment Group as head of engineering management for our streaming services, Viaplay. So currently I'm overseeing 12 teams in 3 different product areas, and that consists of 80 developers and designers. And I have a passion for leadership and people and help teams and individuals to have the best conditions to create great products and also feeling happy and productive in their work environments.
Nice. It's definitely a big job with 80 people, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't do everything myself. I have an awesome team of 6 engineering managers that we're doing this together.
Oh, nice. No, it sounds good. And Christian, we'll come to you.
Yeah, so I'm Christian and I am working as a line manager on the company called Mentimeter. And as a line manager, I have like the people responsibility of my direct reports. It's about hiring, onboarding, all the one-on-ones, coaching them through their professional development. But I don't have any delivery responsibilities. I'm not the team lead, so I'm more of the HR person to my direct reports. And today I have like 8 people that I'm working with. And I'm also working as an engineer besides doing line management. But at this point, I'm also on parental leave. So right now I'm focusing on the line management duties. And before Mentimeter, I've been taking part of joining startups and scale-ups in Stockholm for around 15 years. So I have some experience both in like being an engineer, software developer, and also like being a manager. And my passion is around building things. It's building teams or building products. It's solving problems together. I think that is very rewarding when you feel that you are achieving stuff together in a team.
Nice. I think it's a nice mix that you've got the kind of line manager duty as well as the engineer to be able to combine that as well. Sounds good. Okay, and Alessio?
Yeah, hi, my name is Alessio Maffeis. I'm engineering manager at HappySucks, where I'm leading a dev team that is working with our e-commerce platform. Right now the team is about 9 people. It's a cross-functional team, like with developers, DevOps engineers, and QA specialists as well. Originally, I'm from Italy. Moved to Sweden like 4 years ago. First, I've been working at a company called Daniel Wellington, origin as a developer, then as a team lead for their marketing technology team. What I'm passionate about, it's a bit like also for me, like building great teams and products, because I think that the two things always go hand to hand. And a bit outside like my work area, it's usually photography, everything that has to do with photography, like 360 degrees, like from analog film cameras to drones. I'm always passionate about everything that has to do with that.
Nice, that's cool. That's quite a unique one to have, which is different. That's good. Okay, and Håkan?
Yeah, my name is Håkan Sandström. I'm the manager for the digital sales channel at HED, and that is HED.se, our app, and also Tillsammans shop share, where you play together. I have a team around 25 people, and I'm passionate about building strong autonomic teams with lots of diversity in the team, not just white males in the 40s. It's like young, senior, mid-senior, juniors and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's me.
Oh, that's cool. I've been talking a lot about diversity, and I've actually done a podcast recently on it. And it's such a big thing at the moment because it's definitely worthwhile. You all have teams and kind of getting difference of opinions and different kinds of people. So you've got the mixture. No, that all sounds good. I mean, great, we kind of know each other a little bit more now. So I think with the topic in mind of work-life balance, how we implement these into teams, let's just kind of jump straight into some of the topics that we're keen to discuss. So Christian, we'll come to you, and your kind of topic or sub-question was to do with how to deal with stress. But yeah, if you want to tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So when I was thinking about this discussion that we're going to have right now is work-life balance is in teams, what is important to cover there. And I think, what doesn't create like a good work-life balance. I think we all know that is like when stress is taking over your life in different ways, you feel that, the work part maybe is taking too much time of your life. So you don't have clear boundaries, you're not enjoying life, you can feel stressed in many ways. So I think like stress is something there at the core that you need to be aware of and that you need to work with, and that you can do lots of adjustments around. So for me, when it comes to stress, I think I've seen this great image somewhere. Like you have this scale where on one end of the scale you have, the requirements, what you need to do, what is expected of you as an employee. And on the other scale, you have your capabilities. It's around, your skill set, your knowledge, it's about your control, what kind of control do you have, what kind of decision can you take, and also like everything with time. And often when it comes to the scale, you start to feel stress when the scale is not balancing very well. So, you don't have the resources to meet the requirements. And I think the easiest way to approach this problem is to look at the requirements end of the scale, because that is probably where you can make more adjustments. You can't just, ask for more people to your team. It's many dependencies to get more people in. So I think you have to start to think about, what does your team have now? What do you have? And from that, it's about often, to be more effective and impactful in your work, to be able to achieve more and to be able to, start to reduce some stress. So this is very many things you can do on your own, like on your individual side of things. If you feel stress, there is many things you can do around it. Working together with your team, working together with your stakeholders and so on. And I think we're going to discuss that more. But also you have to look, since we're now talking about work-life balance in a team, I think, you know, it's also about the individual in the team, but also as a whole, how is the team managing and so supporting each other to try to achieve more work-life balance. So it's also about, you know, making a team, making sure that you have some basic rules of how you are interacting, what is expected of everyone. So yeah, I think stress in general is super important to be aware of, what you can do about it, and you can do many things to reduce stress, and it's many papers, many articles, you know, written on this subject. So I think there's quite easy basic stuff that you can do in your team to achieve better work-life balance.
Yeah, definitely. I think the key thing you mentioned there about the team, it's so true when your work-life balance isn't correct and you've not got the balance right, and then you're more stressed. Other people definitely can pick up on that, and hopefully do pick up on that to be able to help. But what do you guys think on the topic of stress and kind of having a work-life balance?
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting thing, and what we currently doing and experimenting with at Viaplay is that have, for example, on your point there, Christian, so people feeling that they can contribute and actually do the work in a good way and such. We experimenting with meeting-free days, for example, because when we started going into this pandemic and being remotely, we saw that people feeling that, yeah, they could be really productive and such, but after a while we have more and more meetings, and now we tend to have like meeting fatigue. We have lots of meetings because we need information to do our work, but now it's back-to-back meetings, and when should they do the work then? So I think we as leaders can help the team with some structure. So what we did, we saw that happen. So we tried, how about we try out to have like Wednesdays is meeting-free days. You cannot book meetings with the teams and such on Wednesday. And that's one thing you can try out to see if that's ease up that people feeling that is not so stressed. And another thing I think also super important that if you have this work-life balance, and for some people it's better, maybe they can do some errands and such during the day, and then they can pick up some work at night, and that's good. That's really good. But you should also be cautious if you're sending emails or Slack message off work hours, because that can also stress people that, okay, do I need to answer this now or such? So even though it works for some people, it can stress your teammates if you suddenly late at night you got Slack message or something like that. So that's also something we discuss and say, okay, let's start using the scheduling thing you have in Outlook, for example. That is a really awesome thing to do. You can do lots of emails in the evening, but scheduling to send them in the morning during office hours.
Yeah, and also to set up the expectations from the teams that, you know, you don't need to check your inbox after, you know, office hours, so they know it's okay. I think that is a very easy trick that can, you know, reduce a lot of stress. I think it's for myself, you know, if I'm trying to soon out the work quite early in the evening, because I know if I start to think about work, I'm going to spin up my brain, and it's going to take maybe 1 or 2 hours until I'm relaxed again. So it can, you know, affect my evening and also like my sleeping a lot. So I think you should not take lightly on that, actually, how you are, you know, interacting with your team members outside office hours. I think that's a super easy and quick rule that you can add to how are you, you know, interacting with each other outside office hours.
Yeah, and also what we learned in the beginning was that when I was, from my example, when I was sitting at the kitchen desks and eating like lunch and checking my computer, eating breakfast, checking my computer. You need to have like a separate space where you work, so you don't work where you eat and sleep and stuff like that. So like going to work, but you're at home. So that's also reduces stress for me, and also I think reduces stress for everybody. To have like schedule 1 hour lunch, schedule short breaks, work 50 minutes, take 10 minutes off and stuff like that. It's just to go down in the pace.
Yeah, this like very, quite basic things, it actually works. I mean, doing some physical exercise, taking a walk, it's very, the fundamentals, it works. Yeah, it's powerful and it works. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also that we encourage people to do that if that's possible. Take a walk and talk. You can go outside if it's a beautiful weather like today and have that meeting and get some air at the same time. Another thing that we have a challenge with a little bit is that we have recruited people from all over the world, and some of these really young people. So often they tend to live in smaller apartments. So it's a challenge for them maybe to have a separate workspace from where they eat and living. Have you seen that in your work environments, or now that we go in remotely, that could be a challenge?
Yeah, in some, as you say, in the young people that living in a one flat apartment, then that could be a problem. I think, and we have to say that it's okay to take these small breaks, even if just 10 minutes. Go away. We need to trust the people that actually do the work. When we went home in the beginning of this in March, we had the production went up. We did actually produce more code than what was expected, and that was, everybody thought it was going to be the other way around. But everybody put up the computer at 7 in the morning because they didn't have to travel to work, and close it 5, 6 in the afternoon, and just code. And that was, we always had to remind them, take breaks, take small breaks, take lunches and so.
A lot of things you said resonate with my experience as well. Especially when you mentioned the no meeting Wednesday, is precisely what we are experimenting with great success and pleasure from all the people in the development team. So far so good. But more in general, I think that as Christian said before, it all starts on the individual level versus yourself. So it's about self-awareness first. So you should be really try to be transparent yourself about what you can and what you can't handle, and then try to transfer that on a team level. Try to encourage people to share what are their main concerns, what they think that they cannot solve, they cannot handle in that moment. Because especially when you think about stress and burnout, which is another hot topic which is related to stress, is the general feeling is that burnout is strictly related to the sheer amount of work, the amount of hours, the amount of effort that is put into the work. But there is a lot more recent research that links it more to the perceived lack of control over what you're doing. So I guess that from my perspective, I always try to encourage the people to share what they feel like they don't have control over it, and try to overcome it together, and try to remove those kind of blockers.
Yeah, that was a really nice addition with the focus on the control. That's I'm going to start using that more. One thing that we are doing on Mentimeter as well, that many team has adopted, is having this emotion check-in. So we start the day by doing one emotional check-in where you're describing what your feeling are, and that is the team to be more transparent, to get to be more personal, so everyone understands where you're at. And I think this is especially important during the pandemic, when you're not in the same room. You don't pick up those signals on how people are doing, and everyone is connected in the same physical room. It's much more easier. But in this distributed setup, I think that has been a really important add that we've done, check in from an emotional side early in the morning, and be transparent, build those personal relationships. That comes as a nice side effect on that as well.
Yeah, and I really like that approach, that we did the control, because now we're having this setup remote. You don't meet your colleagues on the natural way in the office and such. We see that it's lots of fear, FOMO, fear of missing out. Because do I have the information I need to do my work? Should I talk to which person should I talk to have that information? So one way we see that also that it tends to have more meetings because we're feeling that we don't have control. We are fear of missing out, so we need to have more meetings to have that type of control. So that's something we talking about at the moment. How can we make sure that everybody have that information they need to do the work and know to find the information? Because it's easy enough to say, yeah, we're having Slack and we have Teams and we have lots of different places, but it's hard to find the information if you don't know where to find it. So I think that's super important to have a structure and a plan how people can access the information they need to do the work.
Yeah, that could also be like if they get too many emails, that could also be stressful. And also, I know myself and other teammates also that first you send an email, and if you don't get a response in like 5 minutes, then you Slack them. If you don't get a response there, you try Teams, and then you try to call them. I mean, they could be very super into very hard coding, and then we just almost harass them. It's much easier when you're sitting in the office. You see the person suddenly you have their headphones on, and they know they don't want to be disturbed. It's much harder to see if a person doesn't want to be disturbed when you're sitting from home. So that's also a challenge that we need to look into.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's some interesting points there, especially with kind of how you guys as leaders can manage these. Like you said, you're not there, you can't see how people are maybe dealing with stress when they're from home, and I think that's a big challenge, because you can ask and you can ask, but if the person doesn't want to admit, yeah, I'm feeling really stressed, I'm feeling really like I'm heading towards a burnout, then it can be really tough. I think I know a lot of companies have kind of adapted, and like you said, they'll do the no work meetings as well. They'll do just meetings like a fika online. They'll do things that are social as well, which definitely helps balance the stress. I think there's some really good initiatives going on. But yeah, I think in terms of kind of thinking about the future and how we're going to stay, and after the pandemic, after the normality returns, Matti, you wanted to discuss kind of some future remote working policies. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about kind of that topic and what you think on that.
Yeah, it's we discussing that currently at NENT and Viaplay, how it looks like in the future, because we see that more and more that working remotely, it works quite good, to be honest. And at the same time, we see that people needs to socialize. You need to meet other people and such. So we had that currently in discussion. What would that look like when we can go back to the office? Because we are totally remote now. Do we gonna have a hybrid? What could that look like? Should we just trust people, say yes, you can work from home if you want to, or from the office? How will that affect the teams? Because now it's quite easy because everybody's remote. But if you have a hybrid, that some people in the team wants to be in the office and some decide to not be in the office, how do you deal with that? Because you're not, I've been working in that kind of a situation before when I worked in the global companies and such, with the teams across the world. It's always that though people that are on the link, on the video, they feel a little bit left out, and they don't really pick up on everything that's happening in that room. And when you ending that meeting and you go out from the room and you sign off from the video call, you don't hear the discussion after the meeting, and maybe they solving a problem the way back to the desks. So it would be really interesting to see how you thinking about that, and when we can go back to work, or is it something you're talking about in your companies today?
Yeah, I think that like on Mentimeter, we have taken quite a strong stand on this, that we have always been like office first. That has been very important for us to like build culture and being able to be innovative. And that was one, of the strengths that I saw when I joined Mentimeter, that everyone was actually collected in the same office in Stockholm. And before that, I've been working with distributed teams, with remote teams. And, I've experienced, all the challenge with, communication, getting, having different cultures in different offices, and it's lots of communication. It's lots of things you need to do to make it work. But if everyone is, in the same room, you just take away some of these, impediments, because everyone is in the same room, and it's so much easier to do communication. So we are, discussing it. We're talking about Office First 2.0. We're not exactly sure how it will be, but we're going to continue to be, very office first, to be able to, work with our culture and be innovative. But of course, we're going to have some kind of flexibility as well. But our first standpoint is that we want to go back to our, office first mentality when this, pandemic is over. But now we are like remote first setup mainly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same at HED. My point of view is that I believe it's good to work from home, both from in an environmental way. I mean, you don't drive a car to work, so you don't travel by train that much, and so on. But also, when we're allowed to go back to the office, I think the office will be packed with people. We need to like hang with the coffee machines to discuss other stuff, just talk to each other and like hang out with each other. But after a while, then people probably think that working from home was quite good. So it could be like working 3 days from home, 2 days in the office, and so on. But we haven't decided yet at HED how to proceed with this. But my belief is that working from home should be possible, and it's digital first.
Yeah, and we hear that also when we recruiting. People asking, what is your remote policy? Because people we see that people want to have the possibility. But I think also it's good to think about to have some structure around it. For example, if you're going to have like a hybrid, like remote and be in an office, maybe you should set up some structure that, okay, let's say that for certain type of meetings, like planning meetings or retrospectives, we decide in this team we meet, because it's easier to have that kind of workshops thing face to face, and then in between maybe you can be home and coding.
Yeah, and I think also it will be much easier to recruit if you're working from home. If you're allowed people from the rest of Sweden or the rest of the world to work from where they're belonging, don't have to force them back to the office, and also have like consultants sitting in Malmö, Östersund, and whenever. That will be much easier, but they sometimes need to come to the office, just not 100% working from home.
Cool. Yeah. At Episox, we still an ongoing discussion as well. We haven't like worked out an official policy on what's going to happen, like when we go back to the office, when we can reopen 100%. But I think it's at least now it's not an ideological topic anymore. I think this forced situation in the last year like showed that we can work remotely as well. So while like personally, like I think for my team, we're gonna move more towards an office first setup, like when we're gonna be allowed to do that. I think it's really impossible to make sure that we have the flexibility and to let people work from home when it's needed for them, when they think that they need to do it. This was actually probably the most common comment that I got when I was like having some chats around the topic around work-life balance in general, not even discussing remote working. Like I think that most people said like, yeah, I love working at the office. I want to go back to the office, but for me, like the most important thing, like when it comes to work-life balance, is being able to work from home for one day if I need to do something in particular, or unless of course there's, as you mentioned, like there's any specific like department meeting or these kind of things that you have sync meetings across bigger organization. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that flexibility that you can have of doing like working, from home when needed, it can really, enrich your life. If you have, small kids that you need to, pick up or need to daycare, having some, flexibility around that it can really, improve your life for sure. And I think that, yeah, I'm repeating myself again here, but I think that like Mentimeter, we're going to be office first, but there will be some flexibility to enjoy life. I think that is maybe some good like phrasing around it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the option, or having the option of being able to work sometimes from home, or me personally, I prefer working in the office, and here in the UK we've been allowed to come back into the office, but you're completely right. It's nice to be able to think, okay, well, tomorrow I might want to work at home. I've got the tools, I've got the capability to, so it's nice to have that as an option. And whether or not people use it, I think when my team came back in, because you've missed everyone, you've missed being around people, you're in all the time, but then it kind of balances out and you get to you find your own rhythm, don't you? And you kind of you know what works for you, and we're very big on accountability and flexibility that comes with that, which does kind of lead us as quite nicely onto the element of trust within teams, and how that impacts a work-life balance, which was your question, Håkan.
Yeah, and I believe both stress and remote work it's about trust. I mean, I trust the teams to do the job. I mean, we work in agile. People can't slack and don't do the job that some others thought when we went home. So I believe trust is the most important thing that we have. And my policy is that when and where doesn't really matter. Is that to get the job done. And we have the control functions to see that people are actually working from home. If someone hasn't moved anything on the board, then people start to ask, how can we help you? Do we get stuck? And so on. So, well, again, it's trust.
I totally agree with you, and that's the same approach that we have. We trust our people in everything, both in the teamworks and also if people we want to be in the office. We don't have a policy that is strictly that you can only be 10 people in the office. We said we trust you people that you go to this office when and stay safe and have the distance and such. That's super important to have that trust. And as you said, Håkan, it's about to get the job done, not about to counting hours or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's really the point. Like all the reticence, like from companies before the coronavirus crisis about letting people working remotely was mostly about trust, and also that probably goes along the origin of the work-life balance term as well, like which is more rooted like in a post-industrial age definition of work. And it's like I think that most people, when they think about work-life balance, like tend to conjure this image of a scale with like time spent to work and time spent at home, so life and work like a distinct separation, like whereas today I guess the lines are a bit more blurred. So I guess it really I mean, this time like showed that we can trust people to make the best decision. So we're not really like counting hours anymore, as many were used to be like back in the days. So we might as well let them like focus more on working in a goal-oriented, in a vision-oriented way, and trust people to do the best decision.
Yeah, and that's also about, as I said, it's not to balance the work and your private life. It's the integration, so work-life integration.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, but also when I start to think about trust, it's kind of like me seeing my employees that I trust you guys to do your job, but it's not actually. Trust is a hard word in a way. They just want to do the job. It doesn't really matter where or when, as I said, but it's all about trust anyway. But it's kind of, yeah, I'm not really sure what I'm saying here, but it's trust, but not trust, if you know what I mean. I mean, trust is a strong word, but we need to trust the people that do the job.
I think I know what you mean. This is like with empowerment. It's I empower you. It's like you have some power that you give away. It's like I trust you. I give you that trust.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Exactly. And I want to remove this empowerment.
Yeah, and it's also this like mental model called SCARF. Have you heard about that? Where in different dimensions, it's easy for a person to feel stressed. It's about status. It's about certainty. It's about being autonomous, being able to take decisions. And I think the R is about relatedness, that you feel that you connect with the people around you. And the F, what is that? Maybe you remember. But so yeah, there are many ways that can introduce like stress to an individual. That is shown through this model SCARF, and being able to be in control and being to take decisions. That's so important. Like if then you really empower people and they feel energy that they can take some control in their daily work, and affect the work going forward as well. So get rid of the micromanagement and be more goal oriented, and empower your team. Yeah, that is like where you want to be if you want to be productive, and if you want to have like retention in your team as well. I mean, it's so easy for engineers to move around with different companies, and when they start to lack of motivation, it's 5 or 6 other companies waiting there to recruit them. So trusting people is key for be able to build like high motivation teams as well.
I think the F is standing for fairness and be treated fair.
Yeah.
I think that's a really nice model, and it's easy to relate to. And actually, when you're going through that model, it's everything we talked about today here. So it's maybe that's what it cooks down to: trust.
Yeah, I've never heard of that that model, but it definitely makes sense. I think having trust, and also if from my point of view, because kind of knowing that my manager trusts me and I'm not being watched or thinking, okay, does my manager think I'm working? That is such a nice feeling, and that makes you just feel so much more secure, and it makes you feel happier, which then of course can help with the stuff, with the stress, with the kind of feeling like you've got a bit of a balance. But nice. I think moving on to the question from yourself, Alessio, is kind of pandemic adaptations that you think will continue. So anything that you guys have maybe done as an adaptation to the current situation that's worked really well, what does that look like for the future?
Yeah, I was like thinking more about things that you either tried or learned like during this year of forced remote work that you think you're going to carry over once, or if we ever go back to normal. Maybe I can start as well and discuss a bit like what are my thoughts. I guess the main thing probably is like an extreme attention to finding the right way to communicate, like especially contrasting asynchronous and synchronous ways of communicate. Like when I guess the first temptation, like when we first were forced to go work from home, work remotely, was to try to replicate all the processes or the workflows that we had like in the office in person, and try to replicate them in the digital space. So that led to what Matti said in the beginning, like a wall of meetings every day. So for the first weeks, probably was very, very frustrating and very stressing, because it was pretty much back-to-back meetings from 9 to 5. And then like after a while, like there's always like that kind of meme, like this meeting should have been an email or something like that, should have been a Slack message. So I guess one of the abilities and things that you tend to learn like with time is to understand when to make to schedule a meeting and when to send a Slack message or an email. But then also like to use more asynchronous like ways of working, like Slack, or as you said, like documentation as well, like taking the time to instead of having a meeting and expect like that in 30 minutes you're going to have all the answers to your questions, not to solve the problems in a meeting, which is usually the expectation that a lot of people have when scheduling a meeting. Like try to maybe just explain the problem, and then let people take that home and think about it, like write down their thoughts, documenting what they think could be a solution. Or project management tools as well, not also another example of synchronous tools and ways of communicating. On more practical things, I think like that goes a bit in line with emotional check-in. We kind of have a similar thing which is our daily checkout, which is complements like the check-in, the stand-up that we have in the morning. The checkout, like whereas like the check-in is more formal, we do a more formal round table around the board and the task and work-related stuff. We tend to keep the checkout very informal, so we just have a quick chat and some FaceTime with everybody in the team. That it's optional, but usually most people join. And often, like it ends up devolves in a gaming session, which is also good to relieve stress and to try to see how people interact with each other, like in outside like the matter of your work. And yeah, maybe can just one other thing like ties a bit into that. It's like every other 2 weeks we do like experiment hack session, like in every other Friday afternoon, and we take that time to basically detach a bit from work and like from the task, at least that are part of our development process, and explore new and different ideas that could be loosely related to what we do, like some experiment on the website, or it could be something a bit different. Like in the last one, we essentially split up in different groups and started building games that didn't really have much to do without it, but everybody really loved that, and we explored things and technologies like that we normally don't use, like Rust. Like we don't use Rust in anywhere in our stack. We use it like to build the game itself, like on the front end side. So it was very weird and something that experimental and impractical that otherwise we would not try. So I'm really curious to hear like if you had any anything that you think you will carry over once we go back to the office.
Yeah, one thing that I definitely want us to carry over, this is the meeting-free Wednesdays. I think that's really good. And I really like to hear that you're also doing checkouts. We have many teams doing the same, and that they are very much appreciated to just do that really informal, just to check out after the day. And I think also that's something we need to carry over to when we're going back to after the pandemic. I think that's a really good thing to just okay, the day is ending, and now you can check out your brain and not thinking about work.
Yeah, I think that also that check out and check in is something to do that just to see that everybody's there in the morning and everybody's checking out in the afternoon. Then they know that, okay, they have checked out. I will not try to contact them. And also this meeting freeze days, I think that is something that we really need to implement at HED also. Could be like half days and so on. But another thing that I'm thinking about after this pandemic, what we will probably do is that before the pandemic, if you went to work and you had like a sore throat or you were a little bit sick, but you still did go to work. I think this will change after this pandemic, that if you have a sore throat, then you will be home. So hopefully everybody will be much more healthier after this pandemic.
Yeah, great point. Really, that's great. Now a lot of things that seem normal, like going like with a slight amount of fever at the office. Now it's crazy. It's unthinkable.
I think one thing I hope is going to stay for me is this. I think one thing that I've learned is the importance of building more relationships on a little bit of a personal level during the pandemic. And before, when I was in office, I could run between meetings back to back, and didn't really take the time to connect with people at the coffee machine, getting to know them, what's going on. So I think now when I'm going back, that is something I will focus more when I'm actually in the office, to meet people, I would be more, I would spend more time, get to know my people around me on a personal level. And what I've said also to people when they go back to office now is that, if you go into the office, make sure that you have lots of space in your calendar so you actually have time to check in with people, to socialize, because that is so important when you actually are meeting people in the office, because it's hard to, it's not as smooth of doing it through a Slack or on a one-on-one have that spontaneous chat just to having a call with someone. So I think that is something I will appreciate more after this pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. I think for like I said before, we're kind of back in the office doing a hybrid model, but a lot of what we have done and what we have adapted to is kind of the social side of things. So every day at 10:30 we'll have a fika that's all online, and even though at some points we'll all be sat in the office and we can literally see each other, we'll still do it online. We'll do it on Teams, just so then if people are at home, it doesn't really affect that. And I think you're completely right, Christian, with the social side of things and kind of having the non-work chats and it not always being this is about work. It can sometimes, it definitely can impact your work-life balance, and having that kind of social side of the meetings or the spontaneous conversations is what you need. It's what you miss. But I'm not sure how easy it will be to keep that up, because when you do go back into the office, will your mindset change as to, okay, we're in the office now, we've got to work? Like it's quite a bit of a tricky one.
I think when we come back to the office, work will not be on the top of everybody's mind. It's socialize. It's top on everybody's mind when we come back to the office. That's what I think.
Yeah, and also if it will be that people are having this hybrid a bit going forward, I think then when you actually are in office, it will be more around the social activities. So I think that is going probably to be a bit of a change. When you are in the office, it's going to be more social activities.
So maybe we need to rebuild our offices to be more having more that kind of environment.
More playful.
Yeah.
More ping pong tables.
Yeah.
More fika places. Yeah.
More social,
Interesting.
more social areas than desk areas.
Yeah, that's so true. It's something to think about, isn't it? Because who knows what's going to happen, like when we do go back into, well, when you guys do go back into the office. It's definitely these little things that you maybe don't think about now. You just think, okay, we'll slot back into it. It's definitely worth maybe putting some thought into. And something I wanted to kind of ask from you guys, or get your opinions, is on the topic of work-life balance. How, as managers or as leaders, do you kind of ensure people with different situations can still have a work-life balance? What I mean by that is kind of someone, like I said earlier, who's single, living in an apartment in the middle of the city, 1 bedroom, very, very different to them working at home. Say if they were to be with a partner with children who's also working from home, they're 2 very different situations. So how, as managers, do you kind of manage that situation and kind of implement, or do your best to implement, a work-life balance on different situations?
I think it's super important to do check-ins with your people all the time and just ask the question, how are you doing? And not having meetings just to do some status, what's happening in your work. Just ask that question, how are you? I think that's super important.
Yeah, I totally agree about this social interaction. Just as you said, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And also, if you do it by Teams, also have the camera on so you see the person that you're talking to, not just calling him, because it's also see face reactions and also how they feel. It's not just have them saying it, you can also see it.
Yeah, in general, keep an eye on people. Try to be more empathic with people. Try to understand like what kind of problems might be facing as well. Sometimes, like, I mean, asking is always the first step, but sometimes people are not very open about personal issues. So it's good to try to be empathetic, and try to figure out like which kind of issues they might not want to share. But then the other thing, again, it's the same thing that we discussed before about flexibility. Like, try to cater a bit more towards the needs. Like I said previously, it was when we were like working at the office, it was like a stricter and more clean cut distinction between like the times that you spent working and you spent home, and so you had a lot of routines built around that distinction. Now that doesn't necessarily exist anymore, so we are we also, I think, as managers, like found ourselves in a new role, because previously maybe we were not really thinking about that, about what people are doing in their lives, in their daily work, in their own routines, as much as we're doing now. Yeah, it's a very, very, very hard topic, I would say.
Yeah, well said. I think it's, it's about trying to get to know people on a personal level. And, that can be, hard to do, because if the other part doesn't really want to open up, how can you come around that? But I think, as a manager in those situations, you need to share yourself. You need to be private with them. And then, if you open up, it's more easier for the other person as well to, share. You should share vulnerable, and then it often comes the other way as well. So I think it's about yourself as well. It's important to be personal and being vulnerable and showing, that you do mistakes, or you feel bad, or you have some private issue or whatever, something's going on in your family. I think that's super important as well. That you also become personal with your people.
Yeah, I think the comment on kind of and then what I think to sum this whole thing up, I think it runs through is definitely communication with everyone, and like you said, building relationships. And and you do that over video. We do a lot of kind of video meetings, and that's definitely a lot easier to really know how someone's feeling and what they're doing, and you can tell a lot by someone's body language, by how they actually respond. And I think what you said there, Alessio, on routine, that is so important as well. Having a routine, it's crazy how much having a routine actually can make you feel well balanced in life. I think it's some good pieces of advice there that you've all kind of mentioned. But yeah, is there anything else that you guys wanted to mention or cover? No. Well, I think it's definitely been insightful. You all have given some great advice in here, and I know people definitely enjoy listening to it.
Thank you.
Oh, no
Cool.
worries. I'll